Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Monday night workshop. Happy New Year, if I haven't said that to you already. Very excited that we're starting the year out with some changes that are happening to Omega. And as I said in the newsletter, we will keep you posted. The first one, of course, naturally, is the Book of the Month Club, where we're going to meet together at the end of the month. I think this month is January 27th, and of course you saw the book review that I had yesterday or recently called The Good News. Highly recommend this book, and I look forward to discussing it with you all on the 27th. And then, of course, we have our next Wednesday workshop, which will be in 2 weeks, and that is on understanding the many levels of understanding. But tonight's topic is the pros and cons of desire. Ooh, I apologize. I also meant to say the biggest change that is happening right now, naturally, is we're doing all the workshops online for now. It's just a temporary until we get some funds coming in, but this will just be our temporary solution to that. So thank you all who have been coming to our Monday night workshops. I miss seeing your smiling faces, and hopefully we'll get to see you soon. Again, back to tonight's topic, the pros and cons of desire. I was thinking about how when we're on a spiritual journey, George used to ask this, what is that you desire? And sometimes it's a hard thing to answer, to pinpoint the things that we're looking for or desiring in our lives. It's a question because there's so many different levels of desire. It could be a short-lived, like I desire to, I don't know, lose weight, or I desire pasta. I'm really hungry right now, so I'm desiring a pizza, truth be told. Or we can have a long desire, like a long-range goal, desire to do an Ironman, for example. That's for Ahmad. And when he strives for reaching his iron goal, he has to practice and run and practice isn't the correct word, I'm sorry, train. He has to do training. So anytime we are striving for something, it requires a great deal of effort that we put in. So Webster, I wanted to go to Webster. Webster defines desire as two things, a verb and a noun. So the verb is when I'm hoping or longing for something, and the noun is when I have a conscious yearning, when I'm consciously striving for, let me make sure I'm adding this correctly, it's a conscious impulse towards something that promises enjoyment or satisfaction once I attain it. We could also add the words goals or impulse, attachment, addictions, drive, obsession, etc. We all understand this. So desire is often equated with the word fire. I've always thought of that as well, but I try to think of that today. When was the first time I heard that desire is the fire within? And I honestly can't quite put my finger on it. I want to say it may have been Shirley MacLaine in the 1980s when I read one of her books. But when it comes to the fire within, we all understand the idea of fire. So fire creates, like blacksmiths, they use fire to melt iron. Something that's hard in substance becomes liquid because of the fire. A chef makes a pizza and puts it in a brick oven, uses fire to create the pizza. Seriously, I'm hungry. And then, glass blowers. I love this. A glass blower, if you've ever seen that, they take a very hard substance and blow, and it bends into beautiful creations. All of that is a result of fire. So fire can help us create. We can create beauty, objects, essence. And then when it comes to also fire being destructive, anybody can tell you that. They understand about fire. As a matter of fact, on a personal note, a few weeks ago, my extended family experienced a loss. There was a house fire, and the 8-year-old boy was stuck in the house and he died. Just a couple weeks before Christmas. It still gets to me. But fire obviously destroys. It can end life. I remember when 9/11 happened, I happened to be in New York 2 months after that, and I stood on the site. My brother and I went downtown and we stood on the site. And the destruction and smell, you can't even describe. It was indescribable, the amount of catastrophe, I guess is the best word, that I experienced as a result of fires, bombs, etc. So fire can create, but fire can destroy. So we can make the equivalent analogy. Desire can create and desire can destroy. Both of those are equally acknowledgeable. I say that they're quite true. I would think that that's something that we can understand easily. So then the question would be, well, how do we know if our desire is on the path of destruction or the path of creation? That's easy. I'm saying it's easy, but sometimes when we're on the path of desire, we forget because we're focused on the task at hand, if I could use that. We can desire everything and anything, from a person, a place, a thing, an object. We can also desire internal peace, love, happiness, or competition, jealousy, greed. All of those come into play when it comes to the idea of desire. Every addiction is born of desire. Every addiction that we have, person, place, or thing, gambling, drugs, food, pizza, I promise I won't mention it anymore. All of those are desires. All of those are addictions that can turn into addictions. Gambling, I can't even tell you how many times I've spoken to people where, oh, this is going to be the time, and they'll take their mortgage payment and go to the casino hoping that they're going to win big. Embezzling is a result of desire. We want more, so steal, compensate. We rationalize our actions. So I can also say, like, the idea that desire, there's a whole gambit of emotions and behaviors that encompass desire, from competition to jealousy. All of that comes into play when we think about the idea of desire. We can have the desire for a better house, a better job, a better partner. We can have the desire that our teenagers clean their room. All of those are just, we can say, are all desires. So what makes them negative or con? Well, for the most part, I would say would be unchecked emotions, reactions, when we become reactive. Well, what causes us to be reactive? That's an attachment or an expectation. When my attachments and my expectations are not being met, I get emotional and I get reactive. I don't have to go far. We understand that. So it's an unchecked emotion and reactive. The idea that if you've ever been on a campsite and somebody adds lighter fluid to the fire, not that I'm suggesting that's what you do, but I've been in campsites where people will add lighter fluid to the fire, and naturally you get this big huge explosion. It's like the fire reaches up and jumps for the lighter, and I've seen it where people were holding on to the lighter fluid, squeezing it, and the fire actually follows that stream of fuel. And if they didn't let go of that bottle will catch on fire. If you're standing too close, you would actually singe yourself because of the intensity of the fire. So when we add fuel to a fire, it immediately becomes destructive. When we add inappropriate fuel to the fire, it can be destructive. The same with emotions. When I add emotions, inappropriate emotions, unconscious, reactive emotions, it can become destructive. If you've ever been around an individual who gets explosive because of their unchecked emotions, it's the same thing. You can get burned. And sometimes that's what we call it. Oh, that person burned me. So that would be a reason. One of the reasons why we would go negative would be an unchecked emotion. We would have the negative experience of an individual who reacts, unconsciously reacts. We also have desires that make us blind. Perhaps we're too dedicated or too committed to the goal or desire that we overlook other things. Particularly people who are striving to succeed in the corporate ladder, making a name for themselves. And sometimes when we have that happen, through that, it becomes a hunger that isn't satisfied, and you need the next promotion, and you start doing things where you act inappropriately or perhaps not professionally, but you rationalize it. Oh, it's for the best of the company. Oh, that person shouldn't have been there. Some people actually start gossip to destroy the reputation of other individuals. All of that is because of the desire to succeed or competition. There are so many stories about people who have cheated in competition because it's all just about winning. That's, again, unchecked emotions. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm using the word unchecked emotions because I'm not saying all emotions are bad. What I am indicating is the emotions that are reactive. In other words, all of a sudden we discover that we're acting out in this emotion. It's not like someone actually sits there and says, I think I'll be angry right now. That typically doesn't happen. Most of the time it comes out of us unchecked. And then typically we'll, oh no, calm down and bring ourselves back to center. So I would say then that a unchecked emotion would be unconscious reactions. When I add an unconscious reaction to my desire, I will have a negative result. I'm fairly certain and confident in saying that. It seems to be understandable. I think most people would agree with that. So when we have that emotion, again, sometimes it blinds us. It actually can blind us, and relationships suffer. Spouses feel unloved or neglected. Children become accustomed to an absent parent because, there's the early into the office, late night meetings. Some people even work on the weekends. Even if they're home, they're constantly checking their phones. I had a client, it was amazing, but she actually went to bed with the phone in her hand and would check constantly. She would, she was breastfeeding at the time, so she'd have to get up at 3 in the morning anyway, but on the phone in the hand. Not that that's anything wrong, but sometimes I think the work-life balance is tilted because of the desire to succeed, to make the money, to make the company happy, to make your boss happy. Again, not saying you shouldn't do what you can to be a good employee, but there's a line that has to be drawn, a line that should be drawn to find the balance of happiness as well as success, if I can use those two terms right there. Of course, we also understand that when our desire is amok, we have physical illness, we have stress, we don't sleep well, we eat unhealthy, we're not exercising anymore. Emotionally, we have stress, we're a little bit more edgy, a little bit reactive, less tolerant, less patient. Can you fix the clock, please? Thank you. Then sometimes we get to where our mind is fuzzy, we're single focused and we don't see anything else. So that could be a more downplay or disadvantages the negative aspect of desire. Now, of course, I haven't presented anything new. Almost all of us understand this. So the benefits of desire, I would say the benefits of desire, I don't want to say I favor them, but I think if we understand desire, we can positively see the benefits of desire. To me, desire is motivation. I love desire. Feed the desire. I mean, all of that comes into play when you feed your desire, your focus, and your desire motivates to do things. When I'm motivated, inspired, I achieve. So I know the question would be, well, what's the difference? I could desire a home and a better home. Let's say I desire a better home, and I could have the negative or the positive. Well, let's use this as an example. If I desire a better home on the positive side, well, then I start making improvements. Instead of disparaging and complaining about the house I'm in, I look for ways to improve it. Oh, perhaps maybe a plant there, or paint a wall here, or maybe a nice pillow or a throw rug. I work for improvement. The negative aspect of the desire is I hate where I am and I want to get something better. So it's not that I want to not move, but what does my intention go to? Am I, I guess, making a contribution would be another word that I would use. I'll use the example. We desire to lose weight, right? So we exercise and we eat healthy. We're making the conscious choice. So I don't react going, I'm going to exercise. I don't think I've ever met anybody who angrily exercises and succeeds. Most of the time we have resistance to exercising, but usually halfway through we feel better and it's beneficial. We actually see the beneficial. I actually saw a video last week. Mark Wahlberg, I think his name is, James, the late night show host guy that I think is so funny, the one who does karaoke, carpool karaoke. James Gordon. He was going to Mark Wahlberg's house to work out, and it showed that he woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get at Mark Wahlberg's house by 4:30. And he asked him, so are we going to enjoy this? And Mark Wahlberg says, you're going to hate exercising for the next hour, but when we're done, you're going to love it. And that's how most people do. They go through that thing. Oh, it's so stressful. So sometimes our desire can be that. It can be so stressful because we think we can't attain it. But if we pull back and look at the big picture, we recognize, oh, that wasn't too bad. And we see the benefits of our desire. So, think about college. When we desire and want an education in colleges, 4 years of school and all the loans that we get, that can be discouraging. But if we keep our mind on the bigger picture, it does go quite quickly, and before we know it, we have our degree and we can move on towards our career. So the key here is to rise above our emotions. That's the key. To rise above our emotions. What does that mean? Well, instead of reactive, I choose it. Instead of reacting to the fact that I say, okay, here's what I want to do. And I plan out my day, let's say. History truly is filled with many examples of people who set forth desire and they achieved change, or they've even achieved nirvana. So most of the time our desire is change. But Buddha, I said nirvana, so naturally that makes me think about Buddha. Buddha, wonderful individual. Those of you who don't know the story of Buddha, he was a prince, wealthy, left and gave up all that wealth searching for enlightenment. He took on the path of a beggar. And even had a beggar bowl. That's what they called them, beggar bowls. So, food, water, whatnot. Now, back then, surprisingly enough, beggars were not supposed to eat, just supposed to tithings and I don't know what. But Buddha decided I'm going to eat because he needed food and whatnot. But anyway, story all comes down to it. He sat underneath the Bodhi tree, and Buddha refused to move until he achieved enlightenment. He set a goal, set a task, consciously chose, and put his desire into motion. That would be one example. Of course, Mother Teresa had the desire that no child be unloved. Gandhi had the desire for peace. Martin Luther King had the desire for equality, harmony, anti-racism, it would be the word I could use on that one. Even George had desire. As a matter of fact, George's desire led to Omega Vector. In 1977, I think it was, George wrote Omega Vector. He wrote it, in 1976, he wrote it. And by the end of 1976, the beginning of 1977, he had the Omega program, Omega 1, complete. He put it on a shelf. And for those of you who knew George, he was famous for saying, waiting for the green light. Many times people would ask him to do a certain thing or think, and he would always say, I'm waiting for a green light. They took his inactivity as a lack of concern or pause or confusion, and it wasn't. He really was waiting for a green light. Now, what does that mean? Well, with George, he was waiting for the right moment, timing. He truly believed in timing and vibrations. Anyway, so it sat for a year. 1977, the entire program sat for a year. In 1978, he pulled it off the shelf and did the very first Omega-1 program in his living room. He was overwhelmed by the response. As a matter of fact, there was so much pressure to do another program, they immediately, the following weekend, did another Omega Vector. And thus was the birth of Omega Vector. George's desire, his seed for making a contribution to his desire was to make a contribution to humanity. That was the seed for Omega Vector. All of that stemmed from his desire to contribute. Those of you who knew George, and I loved that I had such a close and personal relationship with him, you saw this in him. It was in everything he did. Every person he met walked away and felt like they were the best friend. George is my best friend. Every person. Because his desire was to make every person feel valuable. And he did. He did a wonderful job at that. Again, that was a conscious choice. It wasn't a reaction. And the people that were the most challenging gave him the greatest opportunity to practice. Greatest opportunity. So we all have the same opportunity. When we encounter challenging individuals, we have opportunities. I don't succeed all the time. I can guarantee you I fail many times, depending on my energy level, whether I've had enough sleep, eating, personality, blah, blah, blah. But it's opportunities, because our desire is to make a contribution. Well, George's desire was to make the contribution. So desire is also a responsibility. I feel this very, very deeply. Desire is a responsibility. When I just like have a fire, I'm responsible for the outcome of that fire. I'm responsible if the fire doesn't create harm or cause havoc. As a matter of fact, if you're out camping, you know you have to put your fire out before you leave the campsite. Unattended fires are frowned upon, naturally, and there are certain things you do to put fires out. You put water on them, you add more dirt on them, and possibly more water, just to ensure that it's all out. In many fire seasons, we know sometimes there's fires that were started by a campfire that was left unattended or jumped and spread. So anyway, the concept is when I have a desire, I have to be responsible, just like being responsible with a fire. So how do I become responsible for my desire? Well, it's an interesting thing to consider. If we think about the law of attraction, let's say, I attract what it is I'm putting out. So if I have a desire to succeed, I align myself with the idea of succession. Dr. Wayne Dyer was very big on the idea of intention. So if I use intention, he called it the power of intention. We can use that, the word desire, same thing as intention, desire. The power of desire, let's say. If I focus on desire and practice desire and seek it, I seek it consciously, then I align myself with desire. That's what the law of attraction is. We align ourselves with universal attractions. So I came across this, I was reading last night, and I posted this, I actually posted on the website. It really captured my attention. It's by Manly P. Hall, my favorite author. He says, "The moment hatred is born in the human heart, the person who permits this condition to exist within himself becomes the embodiment of the plane of universal hatred." I loved that. I mean, there's so many examples of that. Substitute the word judgment, jealousy, love, compassion, joy, anything. When I plant that seed within me and I allow it to exist, I align myself with the plane of whatever that is. So let's say I put the idea of unconditional love, and I allow that to exist inside of me, in my heart, then I align myself with unconditional love. If I align myself with peace and harmony, we can do this with judgment. I mean, it's an easy one. When I allow myself to let judgment exist within me, it spreads. And I align myself with the plane of judgment universally. And then all of a sudden I become aware that I'm surrounded with people who are judging, just like me. The same is true. Flip it to love. Align myself with love. I discover I am manifesting more love in our lives. Align yourself with peace, harmony, desire. So let's say that I set forth the intention of desire, and I plant that seed within me, and I allow that seed of desire to exist within me. Then I allowing myself to the plane, the level of desire, universal desire. Well, then the question naturally would be, well, how do I ensure that the level of desire that I'm aligning with is positive and not negative, that it's a pro rather than a con? That's a great question. If I align myself with desire, then I must consider the fact, is my desire pure? So I'm going to introduce this concept, purity. In other words, am I being selfish? Am I the only one to benefit from my desire? I think about the idea of water. Water, naturally, is a pure essence. In the wilderness, off the mountains, the rain, it's pure. Now, of course, barring Chernobyl or any other natural disaster, let's just say we have pure, clean water. It's not tainted. There's no expectations, there's no attachments. It's just simple and pure. That's what I'm looking for when I think of the idea of purity. So if my desire is pure, meaning I'm not the only one who benefits, it actually does make a contribution somewhere. There's no hidden agendas, there's no attachments, there's no, ha-ha, I got you, none of that. If the desire is, let's say I desire to create more harmony. If my desire is to create more harmony, not just for my own benefit, but for the people who are in my life, any person I encounter, to create harmony. George's desire to make every individual feel like they are of value. It is for them. I get the idea, it seems, that when I desire for another, it has more of a positive impact than when I desire just for myself. Now, I'm not saying that to have our own personal desire is bad. Of course not. We want a desire to grow and evolve and expand and achieve, blah, blah, blah. But with consciousness and not reactiveness. I don't perceive too often desire that is negative in a general purpose. Now, with that said, I can switch over and say, well, of course, there's so many examples in history where violence was created out of desire. You know, kill the infidels or extinguish a population that is below par. It's there. But that's not the intention of making a contribution, and it's all reactive. I would say in history, infidels, elimination of races is reactions. I saw a beautiful story, or actually I think it was one of the stories in the book, where it talked about there was a bombing at a Catholic church. I do not recall where. I think it was Pakistan. I'm going to cry because this was just so moving. I can't tell these stories without crying. Anyway, the next day, the church was surrounded by Muslims who protected the Christians to coming into the place of prayer. Like they desired peace as opposed to, wipe them out. And then in return, the Christians formed a circle and protected the, oh, my mind just went blank, the place of worship for the Muslims, mosque. They protected that as well. So those are examples of dealing with conflict coming from a place of peace, compassion, and love. But it all has to stem from desire. When the airwaves and the radio waves and social media are filled with negativity, we can make the impact with the desire of compassion and love. It doesn't mean we rant and rave and scream and discount. No, just like when we have the house, we don't find fault, we spread love. So I can have the desire to spread love, regardless of who people are screaming and yelling, I can still spread love. George used to tell this great story about William Penn. Back in the 1800s, he was in Pennsylvania, and Indians were massacring a lot of the townspeople, so the laws went out, make sure that you travel in groups and always have your weapon with you. And yet, William Penn would be able to go out into the forest, walk into the Indian communities amongst the Indians, Native Americans, excuse me, the Native Americans, talk with them, and never was harmed. And it was because, records state, it was because he did not walk with violence or vengeance. His whole point was to be peaceful and to come from a point of love. Now, I can already hear the naysayers, oh, but that can't happen today. And again, I'll go back to my examples. Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Buddha, Martin Luther King. These are people who had the desire for greater change, greater contribution, and they continued forth without anger, upset, reaction, without lower levels of emotion. They chose peace, love, harmony, compassion, so on and so forth. So, what I would request is take inventory. Take inventory of your desires at this time. What are the things that you truly desire? And of those desires, are they to make a contribution? Or are they just solely for yourself? Do you have more that are personal or more that are global, if we can use that as an example? Are you obsessed with them? And perhaps maybe what is the price you're willing to pay for them? All of these are good questions to ask yourself. So my desire would be that each of you have a wonderful journey of enlightenment as you go on this task of discovering your desires on whether or not they're pros and cons. Thank you all again for joining me this evening. I truly appreciate your love and support. I will say this, today I spent some time going through our financials, and I'm just so moved by the many of you who continue to support Omega with monthly donations or just one time. I just really am moved and touched by individuals that I don't even know exist, but they're there continuing to keep this work alive. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks for our Wednesday night workshop. Have a wonderful evening. Bye now.